Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 4 of National Masturbation Month. I hope it's been going well for you. This week's movie is a Swedish exploitation film from the 1970s called Thriller, a Cruel Picture, probably better known in the States under an alternate title, They Call Her One Eye. So let's read the back of the box and see what's going on here. Growing up mute after a childhood sexual assault, a young girl, played by beautiful cult starlet Christina Lindberg, spends years working on a remote farm. After missing the bus one day, she is picked up by a suave young man who takes her out to dinner, drugs her, and forces her into a life of drug addiction and prostitution. Torn away from her home, she rebels against her captor, only to have one of her eyes gouged out as punishment, in a scene rumored to have been filmed with an actual corpse. After learning of the death of her parents and fed up with the cards life has dealt, she trains herself in the fine arts of fighting, killing, and revenge. Transformed into a one-woman killing machine, and armed with a sawed-off shotgun, she uses her new skills to enact bloody revenge on those who have done her wrong. So, yeah, rape revenge film. Like most exploitation films, it's a movie with about 10 minutes of good stuff and the rest of it's really boring. I haven't seen this in a long time, but my memory is it's kind of dull. And it's 107 minutes long. Joy. But that's the price that's the price we pay for exploitation goodness. All right, so Thriller, a Cruel Picture. Let's check it out. Well, you do whatever you want. I'll be back in about 3 seconds with my thoughts. Ooh, boy, where to start with this one? The movie exists in 3 major sections. There's where our protagonist, Madeline, which is not exactly how you pronounce her name, but I'd have to listen to it again. Little Maggie. She gets abducted and hooked on heroin and forced into prostitution. So that's the first act of the film. Second act of the film is where she teaches herself how to fight, how to use guns, and how to drive a car really well. Those 2 sections are actually watchable. It's a little on the dull side, but it has a momentum that keeps it from being completely boring. There's always something new and usually pretty weird going on that makes the movie watchable. It's the third act where she goes on her revenge spree, which you figure would be the most entertaining part of the movie, and it has its moments, but it's actually the most boring part of the movie. And I think it's partially because it just completely goes off the rails and makes no damn sense. So let's address the 2 major talking points of the film first. One, which you heard about on the back of the box, is she gets her eye gouged out with a scalpel, and urban legend has it that the filmmakers used a cadaver, an actual real dead body, for that effect. So they used the head of an actual human corpse and poked its eye with a scalpel instead of building a prop head. Is that true? I don't know. Probably. If it's not, it's an impressive effect, and far and away the best effect in the film, because all the effects are terrible. All the gunshots are terrible. All the blood is that really orange paint-looking blood that you saw in a lot of 70s movies, like Dawn of the Dead. So Yeah, I've never really looked into it to see if there's a definitive answer on whether it was really a corpse that got its eye poked, but probably is. The other thing is the explicit sex in the film, which, from what I understand, the film was shot without it, and then the director decided to add hardcore sex in post. So he hired a couple to perform live sex and inserted shots of insertion, and they're really obvious too. Um, the camera angles don't match up. They do they break the 180 rule. Um, it's pretty clear that the woman is not Christina Lindbergh. The hair color doesn't match. Um, yeah, it's pretty clumsy, but whatever. I guess they thought they could sell some more copies of this film if it had hardcore sex in it, so they more power to them. There have been arguments from people who like this film and those who do not, or even some who do like this film but argue that the hardcore sex is exploitative, is unnecessary. Well, yeah, it's an exploitation movie. It's all unnecessary. And I can see that argument. I mean, is Madeline's plight strengthened by explicitly depicting her abuse? Do we really need to see penis and vagina? Does that help sell the horror? Is the movie improved by that? Would it have worked just as well without it? I would argue yes, it would have worked just as well without it. No, we do not need to see it. However, one could make the exact same argument for super gooey gore in horror movies. Do we really need to see someone's intestines spilling out all over the floor to understand the emotions and motivations of the characters? No, but I want to see it anyway. And I imagine for a lot of people, so it goes with hardcore sex. It's an exploitation movie. If people are having sex, by gum, I want to see it. If someone gets their eye poked out by a scalpel, by gum, I want to see it. So yeah. This is a movie that I think should be remade. There are a lot of really neat ideas in this film. I mean, it's kind of your standard rape revenge film, but there's a lot of just odd and interesting things in here that I think there's an actual good movie here. There's some odd stuff. Madeline gets, I don't know if it's Madeline or Magdalene. I'd have to look at it again, but whatever. Christina Lindbergh, she gets kidnapped and hooked on heroin so that she will work in some type of brothel, or she's being forcefully prostituted. They hook her on heroin so that she won't go anywhere because she has to get her fix from them. She has to have 2 packets a day or she'll die in 2 days or something. Here's the thing, though. The guy, her jailer, I guess, lays it out for her. And he says, okay, here's the deal. Every morning I give you a list of customers. So this whole thing is on a schedule. She gets her worksheet in the morning, along with 2 packets of heroin. She gets every Monday off. So she gets 4 packets on Sunday so she can make it to Tuesday. And she gets a cut of the profits. For people who kidnap, drug, and force people into prostitution, that's surprisingly generous. It's like, wow, that's probably the best deal one could ever imagine getting out of horrible people. It's like, wait, I get a work schedule. I get every Monday off. When I'm not working, I can just go wander around because I'll be back for my heroin, and I get money. Really? And the way it's played in the movie, it's kind of weird because all of her clients, if you will, leave money on her bed, and I would have thought that they would have paid the guy, and then he would give her some small money. But the way the movie presents it, it's almost like they're just paying her or they're just leaving tips. I really don't know. But it's kind of odd. And it's never clear, because the guy says, beyond today, you'll never see me again. And he's throughout the rest of the movie. It's weird. I'm not sure if she's in the back room of his house or if they're in like a hotel, because there's another girl there, Abby, Sally, something like that, who's in the same situation. And she comes in and she has this dramatic scene where she talks about, I'm making enough money that in a year I'll be able to go to Switzerland and they have a rehab clinic, but it's really expensive, but I'm saving my money so that I can go there and get off the stuff and escape and live my life. It's like, cool. And she delivers this thing and then she breaks down and crying and then runs out the door, and I'm like, and scene. It's the weirdest awkward thing. There are so many real close-ups on people's face that just hold there. And it gets real awkward because Christina Lindberg's character is mute, probably because the actor probably does not speak Swedish, so that's why she's also not a very good actor. Now I'll cut her some slack in this movie because she probably had no idea what was going on around her. But I've seen her in other films. She's not really a terrific actor. But man, you kind of root for Magdalene at the front of the film, even though stuff just doesn't make any sense. She starts on a farm. The movie opens up with like a 9-year-old girl or something being sexually assaulted in a park by some dirty old man, and that's the trauma that makes her mute, right? So fast forward 15 years. Another interesting thing is they don't try to do, she's exactly 18. She's in her 20s somewhere. She's on a farm, and you're never clear, is this her parents' farm? Not really sure. It turns out it is, but the guy is her dad. They do the really close up on the face thing, which makes him look really creepy. I'm like, oh, is she being molested by this guy too? No, apparently it's just shot weird, and that's her dad. But he says, hey, you better hurry because the bus leaves at 4. We don't know where she's going, but she walks down the street to the bus stop, and she's wearing like a really nice yellow dress with an overcoat. Where is she going? Does she not live there? Is she going home? It just seems like an odd outfit that she would have had there at the farm if she was just going to work at the farm. You have no idea what's going on, but she misses the bus by like 10 feet. And if she wasn't mute, you son of a bitch, what happens right here, damn it, come back. Then the guy picks her up, takes her to dinner, drugs her, hooks her on heroin. Then we have her plot. The first thing he does is he gives her a letter and says, sign this. And the letter is a letter that he's going to send to her parents at the farm that says, hi, Mom and Dad, I hate you. I never liked you. I was miserable the entire time I lived with you, and I never want to see you again. Nanny goats. Son, love Madeline. And he finally gets it's done off screen, but he gets her to sign that and apparently sends it to the parents, and the parents read it and are like, oh, our daughter hates us. Later in the movie, she finds a letter that her parents wrote back. So I guess there was a return address. They never called the cops. They never went to the place. They just wrote a letter back that said, we don't know why you hate us so much, but now life isn't worth living. Goodbye. And so I guess Madeline, on one of her days off, goes to the farm which she really could have done at any time, I guess. And overhears that her parents died. Two things: her parents died from drinking poisonous cow milk, and people are speculating that it was a double suicide. And two, that that they had received multiple letters. So apparently, her jailer guy kept sending late letters. So they kept getting letters from their daughter saying how much she hated them and didn't want to see them anymore. It's like overkill much, man. Jeez. So at that point, she starts going out on her days off to learn how to fight, and she goes to a karate studio and figures out how to fight there, and goes to some guy who has guns and has him teach her how to shoot. Finds some stock car driver to teach her how to drive cars real good. And at one point, she's like shooting up heroin in the middle of the dojo. Not like in the back room or in the bathroom, just kind of sitting there, just shooting up. And the karate master guy comes up to her and is like, and I'm like, are we throwing her out? Oh, okay. Why were you shooting? I understand you need your heroin, but why are you shooting up in the middle of the dojo? That seems odd. And then she is in the woods with two guys dressed in military gear who are beating the snot out of each other. I guess demoing for her how to fight. So she becomes a competent marksman, a competent driver, and a competent fighter. And she uses her money to buy a car and I think a lot of heroin to tide her over, because she's going to kill everybody now. It's really unclear what she bought. She did at least buy a car. I think she buys heroin, because she goes to the guy later and he says, I'm cleaned out. But there's a guy selling hot dogs that you should talk to. Okay. So she goes and she shoots one of the guys who was one of her clients. And then her jailer guy meets with two of her other clients and says, look, Madeline just shot one of her clients. She might come after you too, so I've bought you both tickets to Switzerland or Berlin or somewhere, so you guys should just take off. I'm like, wow, this guy really takes care of the clientele, man. But Madeline shows up and shoots the two of them, and he escapes and hires two goons to go after her and provides the guns himself, because the two goons come into his office and he says, you should kill Madeline and her body should never be found. Here's money. Here's money. Here's your gun. Here's your gun. I'm like, well, you provide the guns too? All right. So little Madeline goes to, I guess, the hot dog guy to get whatever, I don't know. The hot dog guy just kind of points at the warehouse and she walks in and the two guys are standing there and she shoots them both. And the entire scene is done in slow motion. And then she sits on the ground and waits for the cops to show up, because shots fired in the warehouse. Go car 1412. And car 1412 shows up and the two cops come in and they're like, drop the gun. And so she sets it down and walks out with them and then beats the snot out of them in slow motion for like 2 minutes. It's entirely in slow motion and it's just kind of boring. And then she steals the cop car and runs a bunch of people off the road. I don't know if these are just random citizens that she's ramming into and running off the road, but I guess we needed a car chase. Weird. I don't know why she has the cop car. And then she mails her jailer guy, and challenges him to a duel. And he accepts. He actually meets her out there. Now, before I spoil the ending of the movie, I want to say that Madeline, I think I started touching on this and got sidetracked. She actually fights really hard. The movie gets you on her side. She fights again. You know, she's constantly trying to run out, even though she's been drugged. And the second time she runs, the guy keeps pumping heroin into her thinking she's going to stay put, but she keeps running out the front door. And he's chasing her in a car, and she does what she does a smart thing, something that we would normally yell at people in movies for not doing. In movies, when people are being chased by a car, they normally run down a road, and that's because cars need to be on roads, and it's not much of a chase if you can't chase the person. And you yell at the movie going, "Get off the road, idiot!" She immediately gets off the road and starts running through a public park. Of course, she's drugged and she faints pretty quickly, but at least she was thinking. The first time she gets a client, she rakes his face with her nails, and of course that gets her eye gouged out. But yeah, so yay, Madeline. Anyway, so very end of the movie. And at this point, the whole... Oh, I forgot. There was a whole sequence where she goes to a dock like she knows her jailer guy is going to be there. And the whole sequence is a gunfight where you don't know who's shooting at her. Someone's shooting at her, but you actually never find out who. I guess it's the jailer guy, maybe. So weird. So anyway, so she meets her jailer guy for a duel. And he says, hey, baby, put down your gun and let's talk about this. And she puts down her gun. And he pulls out his own gun. I'm going to shoot you in the kneecap because you're horrible. And this is set up, but earlier she taped a gun to the back of her head. So she ripped, kind of like John McClane in the Die Hard. And rips it off and shoots him in the kneecap. And then walks up to, she distracts him with a grenade booby trap too. Which is set up. And then she walks up and she shoots him in the knee. This is the same knee several times. You'd think she's going to shoot him in the head or shoot him in the balls or something. She just shoots him in the knee. And then she ties a rope around his torso and ties the other end to a horse. Suddenly horse. I don't know where the horse came from. I rewound the movie. It's not in any previous shot. There's just suddenly a horse there. And she drags him off down the road. And the next scene, he's buried in the ground up to his neck. And you're like, okay, are we going to do the whole tie a rope around his neck, tie the other end of the horse, swat the horse on the bum, and it goes taken off and yanks his head off? Well, she ties a noose around his neck and cinches it tight, and then ties the rope to the horse so that the rope is actually taut. Normally, there's a lot of slack, so it pulls tight once the horse is far enough away. But... So there's a taut rope from the horse to the guy's neck. And then she puts a bucket, which the movie doesn't actually show, but you assume it's full of horse feed. Puts it about 4 feet in front of the horse. And then walks in front of the guy and just sits down and dispassionately stares him in the eye. As the horse looks at the food in front of him and goes, "Don't mind if I do," and starts walking towards the feed, and of course the guy gets strangled. That's a pretty cool death. I like that. It's still not shot particularly well, and then she drives off into the sunset, and that's the end of the movie. And there's another weird camera thing where the camera is following the car, and then kind of zooms in, and the car disappears over the horizon, and then it zooms back out. And then it cuts to black and credits. Weird. So, if you like this kind of crap, this is probably something worth seeing just to say you've seen it, because it is weird. Especially the last third. If it weren't for the hardcore sex, it would make for a great MST3K episode. There is a lot of weird stuff in this film. So, not a good movie. It's a fairly easy sit for the first 2/3 just because it has momentum. But the last third is just, what is going on? Why? Huh? The last third, I'll admit, has some good stuff, but is kind of boring. Also a longer movie. It's, what did I say, hour 47? Yeah. So, that's that. Yeah, one more week left. So, next week we'll watch one more movie to celebrate National Masturbation Month. Until then, I'm sure you'll find a way to idle away the time. Remember, Idle hands are the devil's playground.